Kia ora and welcome to the Can podcast. I'm the host, Warwick Slow, and today's guest is Daniel Fifita from ONA Insurance Brokers. Now, you might remember Daniel. He was a BDM at Partners Life for 12 years, and he's recently made the transition to going out and starting his own business. This is a great episode if you've ever wondered what it's like on the other side of the fence being a BDM and some of the lessons that you might pick up along the way to then implement that into his new business. This is a great resource. Daniel's super knowledgeable. He's an open book and even talks about some of the questions that mortgage advisors should be asking their clients as part of the advice process to really just like front foot that type of conversation. You can catch this podcast on YouTube. You can do it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts as well. You can find us anywhere, and we'd love it. It helps so much if you just give this a subscribe or a follow. It really helps us invest further into the podcast. So other than that, sit back, relax, and enjoy this. Daniel, thanks so much for joining us today. I've known you for a wee while now through your work at Partners Life as a BDM, and you've gone out and started your own advice business. Where did you land in terms of starting that journey and moving from behind the corporate desk into being a business owner?
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, Warwick, mate. We've known each other for a wee while now. So you're right. I was at Partners Life for a long time, 12 years, but I recently decided to start up my own advice business, specializing in life and health insurance. So I guess for me, helping advisor businesses for so long, it was probably like the natural progression to look at something like this. So yeah, been in the BDM role or the ADM role at Partners Life for was better part of 8 years. And more recently, before I left, I was the product specialist there. So that probably gave me the confidence to go out even more so, just given the legislation around knowing what your advice and what you're recommending to your clients. So that's what probably gave me the final kind of tick to make the move is the competency that I guess.
12 years, you must have learned so much in that time. It would be hard to pinpoint like one particular aspect, but like there must be some great lessons that you've learned from dealing with so many advisors that you can then take into your own business.
100%. So yeah, so I know a lot of advisors, and a lot of them have become like really close friends just over the years. When I kind of first joined the ADM team, I would have been 25. So it was a cool role to be in as a 25-year-old, So a lot of networking, shall we call it? But there was a lot of learning as well. But yeah, it was cool to see different advisor businesses operate in different ways, and I guess it's kind of given me the knowledge to go, I like what this guy's doing. I'll add a bit of this to my practice, and this is something that another guy's doing. Maybe I can do that when I try scale. So it's given me a lot of insight into advisor businesses, and I guess I can pick and mix what I implement in my own business. So yeah.
Are there any like small things that you notice a lot of businesses are doing that you've implemented into yours?
So I think when I started as an ADM, it was kind of like the old way, was what I refer to it. The pre-IFSLA legislation change. So it was a lot more loose, for lack of a better term. And given that the legislation was quite loose, it was kind of up to their own advisory practices to kind of set the standard that they operated in. So now, we're in a licensing environment. The biggest thing that I've probably seen in the transition is just record keeping, which is probably, yeah. So, Trail's done a really good job at creating a really good CRM. So there's a lot of compliance in the CRM, which is probably the word of the last 5 years, I guess. But yeah, record keeping is probably the one that I've seen, just making sure that when you're in touch with a client, there's a note of it somewhere in your CRM, because it's all about, the client now with the new legislation. Or I should stop calling it new, because
relatively new. If we think back to like the beginning of time, or maybe not even that far, but the beginning of the like financial services industry in New Zealand, which is still quite young.
Yeah.
It's been a big change for a lot of people. And I think your point is such a good one, because people often ask me the same question. They're like, oh, how can I be getting the most out of Trail? A lot of the time when I look at the way they're using it, it's quite, well, to me, it's basic stuff, but it's using the record keeping more effectively.
Yep, that's it, man. So yeah, if there was like I guess like a theme that I've seen advisors kind of adopt, it's having better records and being able to prove that you've done what you've said you're going to do via your record keeping, aka your CRM. So yeah, I guess we've gone from a he said, she said in the old way, I did that, but now it's on the advisor to prove that they have done their job. So record keeping is key.
Super important. It's funny, like you coming from what I'd say the old way, and it was like a really different environment. You had, like these, I mean, it was before I joined the industry. I think it was around like that time it was changing over. But you'd be having like a yearly conference or yearly event where you'd be going overseas, and it was like all of that's gone now. As a 25-year-old, amazing. Because even now when we go out to these events and I'm like telling my friends about it, I'm like, oh God, as a mid-20s person, this would have been gold, free booze, night out somewhere. But now I'm looking at it going, I kind of just want to get back to the family.
Yeah, no, you're right, man. Like as a young buck, as a BDM, it was pretty cool. But I will say, it was work, and I did have how would I say it? How
I'm
would I frame
watching
this?
you like really carefully
Yeah,
try.
yeah. There was a certain expectation set on me by a certain founder of an insurance company to make sure that I was there and did my job. But no, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was cool. But you're right, man. Now we're older and I guess a bit more boring. So we just want to
No,
go back
not
home
boring.
we just want to go back home to our kids, right?
Yeah, nah. But like for them, that's exciting. I hope. Well, I hope I am. I mean, my son does laugh at my crap faces and stuff. But
Yeah.
what do you think are some, common things that people misunderstand about BDMs? Because they have all this interaction with them, and you've been now on both sides of the fence. Are there any parts that you think advisors should know about?
I think, it's the way that I see the BDM role is very similar to the client and advisor role. So for BDMs, this is the way that I used to think about it. Our client was the advisor, right? And a lot of your interactions that you have with the advisor is very similar to a lot of the interactions that the advisors are having with their clients. So I was fortunate enough to be in a really good distribution team or sales team under the old way, which is and it was all about adding value. So yeah, and I guess being at Partners Life when I was there, there was a lot of value to be had. So it was good, but it was always kind of going, yep, there's a relationship element of it, But at the end of the day, we're here to help each other's businesses. We're here to help your business, and the way you do that is you add the value. So, which is the same kind of thing you would do for a client, right? So that's what I'm trying to do with my clients is to go, how can I add value? And sometimes it's over the client's head, but as long as it's done and it's documented, there's a record of it. It's all about that adding value.
And a lot of the time, BDMs, you almost become a counselor or a therapist to some of these advisors, both when things are maybe they're trying to get a policy set up and it's not quite clicking, and then maybe at claim time as well, they can't quite get the outcome for the customer that's needed. That must take a bit of an emotional toll on you, because you're dealing with people and advisors at these really difficult circumstances. Like, how did you cope with what must be a really difficult thing to handle?
Yeah, I think it's not nice to kind of be at the receiving those kind of calls and things like that. And I understand, especially from the advisor's point of view. But essentially, the way that I try to approach it was just and to help me get past it, and I guess not take that toll on me, or just try to think of it as a logical from a logical point of view. So as long as you can kind of explain the decision, and you have to, because it would have gone through a bit of a process to get to the outcome. As long as you can explain that, and you can explain it in a way where it makes sense, but then also there's that care element, you understand the scenario, then that usually would go down okay, after that initial, I guess, disappointment phase.
Yeah, I guess coming back to the policy wording is king always. And
That's it.
one thing I always liked about partners, and it was that if it's grey, they pay.
Yep. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, that is one of the things, and I think even more so in this new legislation. I need to stop saying new, but is that you need to make sure that you're putting the client first, right? And the way you do that as an advisor is via policy works, because that's what it is at the end of the day. Is that there's a contractual agreement between the insurance company and the client, and that's done via the policy wordings. So if you know the policy wordings that are out there, and you can, the differences, the benefits, the main benefits, and then the sub benefits. So it can get a little bit complicated, but as long as you know that what you're doing is ultimately going to put the client in a better situation, then yeah, you should it's a easy, I guess, no brainer. If you want to, yeah.
Easy thing to justify.
That's right.
And I think a lot of the advisors, I think like a large majority now, like pretty much every advisor that I would come across, like they're trying to do the right thing. And the hard part sometimes is communicating what is can be perceived as quite a complex topic to people on the other end. Like how do you tackle that conversation? Because it can be really, sometimes I even think back to our own journey doing it. I understand insurance now. It took a little bit of time joining the industry.
Yeah.
But then, think even like my partner at the time now, wife, she's kind of going, well, I don't really know what like this all is, like what TPD, what is that? And you're just like really starting at the bare bones. How do you have that conversation?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Warwick. So I've, like I said, as a BDM, and especially in my most recent role at Partners Life before going out as an advisor, as the product specialist, I was dealing with advisors, right? So they needed to know the technicalities and the intricacies of the policy wordings, because ultimately that's what they were giving advice on, and that was my role. So it was kind of having those really in-depth discussions with advisor businesses, with advisors, to make sure that when they give the advice, it's aligned with the policy wordings, and it's correct. The transition to to giving advice directly to clients is an interesting one, because yeah, you're right. Some clients, they want you to be the expert, and I would say majority of clients, they come to you because you're the expert. You've got to kind of read the room, but for the most part, they just want to know that you're putting them in a really good position should the unexpected happen. So yeah, there are some clients that love the data and love to go into the deep dive into the policy wordings, but and I guess that's where I can flex a little bit. I can hold those conversations quite well, but for the most part, they want to. There's a care, I guess, element to it. They want to know that you care about them, and make and you're gonna do a really good job. That should something unexpected happen, they either have the right policy in place or they've been given the right advice, and
can be a bit of a balance, because I even think about like a friend in our group who's an advisor, and he was dealing with a few of the guys in our social circle, and some of them were like, mate, say less, just set it up, but then also I can see from the advisor's point of view, you have an obligation to make sure the client understands it and then record that they do. And if they're like, mate, just set it up, I trust you. You still have this obligation, so it can almost be working against it.
That's right, yeah. So you've got to, I guess your time with the client, you've got to be a little bit strategic around how much you go into it. But as long as you document everything in your statement of advice, the parts that you don't discuss is in writing. I think that's probably the way to go about it. Is you read the room when you're with a client, and you decide how much detail or how little detail you go into, but make sure that you cover your bases when it comes to the report.
And how did you find, were there any trends in particular prior to you moving out and starting your own business when you're at the insurer? I know that claims overall are on the rise. Like maybe some high level trends that you'd seen in insurance prior to you leaving that you're experiencing?
Yeah, for sure. So I don't think it's a surprise, but health insurance specifically has been, the claims there have been increasing, and I guess it's the nature of the product. there's no sum insured. It's there's benefit limits, and it's if you are required to have a medical procedure or even a specialist consultation, then your policy could react and cover that. So there's a lot more touch points when it comes to private medical cover, and there's a lot more claims. And as a result, as the number of claims increases, then I guess demand. I guess the other thing that I'll say around that is, I guess with the last couple of years, there's been a highlight around non-pharmac drugs and the shortage of or the shortfalls of the public health system. So that's probably forced some Kiwis to seek independent advice around that. So we've seen an increase in the health insurance space.
Even speaking about, those cancer claims for non-pharmac, I know that at our recent conference, there were some statistics thrown out, and it was like 6 to 8% of cancer that people get is, genetic. The rest of it is all random. And if you have a lot of people have like a group scheme policy through work that might only have up to like $10,000 worth of cover. When you look at some of these non-pharmac drugs that you need, you're looking for some of them up to 400,000. It's significant.
Yeah, that's it. You've got to know what you've what you kind of have in your policy, right? And if you don't know, your advisor should know. And that's the thing. It's easy to get caught up in the brochure or the promotion material when it says non-pharmac drugs, but if the limitation is 10 grand, it's not going to get you too far, right? So you've got to know when the coverage starts, when it stops, and you're right, there's a lot of shortfalls out there. I think I can't remember the stats, but as of 2023, there's something around 5,500 drugs that were MedSafe approved, and only 2,200 of those actually chemicals were funded by pharmac. Wow. So yeah, it was a huge
difference.
Huge gap.
Is there a desire for them to close that, or is it just too hard, or is there a bit of a process? Is it quite bureaucratic?
Yeah, I think getting into politics here, but I think when it comes to government, there's always going to be limitations, right? Because they can't be everything to everyone. I mean, so the way that pharmac works, or their mandate, is they try to prioritize funding for drugs that will have the most impact on the New Zealand population. It kind of makes sense, right? They probably not going to throw a whole bunch of money at covering a drug that only impacts 100 people, right? So a lot of the drugs that are out there are heavily subsidized. We don't know about. So a lot of pain relief medication is heavily subsidized. So which makes sense, right? Yeah. Everybody suffers pain at some point, so it impacts the greater population. It's more the more kind of like unique type of conditions, or that you see quite a lot, where it only impacts a small percentage of the population.
And that's any industry. If you think about even like with trail, someone might be asking about a very specific use case if we can build it. That we're always going to prioritize building something that benefits the majority of people rather than like a really specialized niche part. And I guess the government to a degree is the same.
That's it. Yep. So there's a budget, and they have a mandate, or that they, I guess, kind of follow. And as a result, there's certain drugs meet the criteria and certain drugs don't.
And a lot of the time, relying on the government to look after you, whilst don't want to get political, but they should have the country's best interests at heart. A lot of the time, like if you think about the best products and the best things that have been created in New Zealand and around the world, was it created by the government? Or was it created by a person who had an idea or took action?
Yeah.
It's always the person, right? So
that's it. And I think, I get, if insurance wasn't here, you can only imagine the impact that it'll have on the public health system, right? If the chance of getting access to treatment privately wasn't available. So yeah, the private health insurance has a huge part to play in with when it comes to protecting Kiwis, man, and having Kiwis getting Kiwis access to the right treatment.
The average wait time, I also saw a lot of those statistics in some areas. It's the average wait time to going to A&E is like 8 hours. It's
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess that's the thing about the public health system, right? Is yes, it's a good thing, but you're also subject to things like wait times, right? So that's the big thing. So when it comes to private health insurance, there's kind of two main, maybe three, but two main reasons why the Kiwi public wants it. One is to skip the queues. So if you needed a hip replacement, for example, it might take you 6 months. Where if you had private health insurance and that was covered, you'll get access to that treatment a lot quicker. And then the second part there is the non-pharmac drugs, just because of the cost involved with paying for a drug that isn't subsidized by the government.
it's that Venn diagram, and you can apply this to most products in any industry. It's good, cheap, fast, and you can only pick two.
That's it, man. That's it. Yeah, yeah. You got it.
Yeah. Well, we've talked a lot about, how things have been going like early on, and I think one bit we didn't touch on was, how do you find the FAP licensing process, having talked about it a lot with advisors, but actually going through it?
Yeah, no, it was good. So at Partners Life, they heavily front-footed that when the transition period was happening, or the change in legislation was happening. So as a member of the distribution team, we were quite involved. However, that was quite a few years ago, and a few things have passed. But Can did a really good job in helping me out. So I had done the advisor support program with Partners Life, but Can kind of helped me maybe go through it and refine it, so it's a bit more applicable to my business. Because at the moment, I'm not a huge corporate, but yeah, they helped me make those changes. That when I did apply, it was pretty straightforward.
A common thing that we see is, you have a business that might have one or two advisors, and they've done this amazing work putting together all the policies and procedures, but because of, they just don't know, they've gone through and they've set up policies and procedures that would work really well for like a large corporate, having like a 10-page complaints policy and how you handle that, when really sometimes less is more, and
Yep.
keeping it simple. And like the legislation itself, it's quite vague. If you can have yours, left up to interpretation as well, it can give you like a little bit of wiggle room if things don't quite fit within the box.
100%, and that's the thing, right? Like, if you're just gonna copy and paste, and you're gonna be following a lot of steps, when a lot of those steps probably aren't relevant to your business, and how your business is set up. So that's what Can did. They went, you've got quite a comprehensive plan here. However, is this really required? Had some good conversations with SG.
Yep.
Yep. So shout out to her. Thank you for helping me there. And yeah, also shout out to Mark Bonisovich.
Oh,
so
one of the goats of the industry right there.
helping put the ASP together.
That guy. He's I think a real influencer, especially in the early stages of the FSLA coming into place.
Yeah.
And it's been great to work closely with him and get his take and interpretation on certain parts, and just get that. He's just so well versed.
Yeah, no, for sure. He was kind of a bit of a gem at Partners Life.
Still is.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
So he was a really good resource to kind of have there.
Great. Now, one thing I like about your business is that you're specializing. You know what you're good at.
Yes.
And I know a big part of your setup has been you're only doing insurance, and you've had links with other businesses that aren't quite offering that at the moment, but they know it's a really important part that their customers should be having that conversation about. A common theme that we see in this industry is mortgage advisors, a lot of the time, they had that conversation with the customer, and a lot of time buying their first home is a catalyst to getting insurance put in place. Like, what are some, you don't overwhelm the customer, but when's the best time to bring up the insurance conversation, and what type of things should they be talking about?
Yeah, interesting question. I've just had a meeting with an insurance advisor who runs his own business, mortgage advisor who runs his own mortgage business, only does mortgages, and this is the kind of conversations we're having. So I think you don't want to overwhelm the client, and I think you don't want the insurance to almost take over the mortgage part, right? Because you're the mortgage advisor is there to get the lending approved and that. So, but there are little pockets that you can introduce the concept of insurance early on. So, and it's part of your duty of care, right, to the client to make sure that they have access to advice, because you've got a client that's worked really hard, maybe whether it's with their wife or with their parents or with their siblings to get to a stage where they're buying a house. And if anything unexpected happens, they should have access to insurance advice, for that plan B. So usually you can plant the seed kind of early on, around, do you have, is there insurance usually in their statement of position? If you're seeing they're allocating some funds to insurance, clarify if that's house and content, is that car insurance, clarify that. If it's not clarified in the statement of position, and if they don't have any insurance, then definitely plant the seed that whether you have a referral partner or you have someone that you work with in-house, you'll be getting them to get in touch, and then you would just touch on that insurance talk or the mortgage protection talk throughout the process. And then usually when they're ready to buy, which is kind of the unconditional phase of the mortgage advice process, you can you can be a bit more direct with proposing your insurance referral. Yep.
What do you find when you have those conversations with customers? Like, what are the biggest misconceptions when it comes to insurance?
I think there's a few. I think clients don't really think that they need it. So it's good when you have a mortgage advisor, you're working with a mortgage advisor, because they already introduced the concept of insurance, and there's something to protect, right? So they worked really hard to get this house. Now you got to have a plan B, because if anything happens, and you don't have, I guess, adequate protection in place, then you could lose that the asset that you've worked really hard to get. So I guess the relevance of insurance is quite hard, but with mortgage advisors it does help, because you have that physical house to protect. I think the other thing is that Kiwis don't understand that insurance is a business, which is a good thing actually, if you think about it, because what it means is that if you meet the policy wordings, insurance companies are contractually obliged to pay out, right? The stats around claim payments is well over, and I think it's in the 90s for all insurance companies, and that's because it's a business, right? There's policy wordings that set the contract. You meet those policy wordings, insurance companies have to pay out, provided that you haven't lied on your application and you meet the policy wordings. So those are the insurance is a business, but it's actually a good thing that it's a business, because it's very, I guess, black and white when it comes to payment.
Those statistics are so high, and I remember, around the time there was that very famous assassination of the healthcare insurance CEO in the US.
Mm-hmm.
And there was all this talk about how low the approval rates are in the States. It was like I can't remember specifically, but it was around like 30%.
Yeah.
Isn't it like? What do you think are the key differences? Like, why is New Zealand so different in that regard?
I think obviously scale. Like we're a lot smaller than the US. From what I hear, there's a lot more fraud happening in that market. Where with New Zealand, it's a smaller pond, right? So I guess there's a few more checks and balances that we have from the insurance point of view to make sure that things are done right.
Yeah, and also I think like having that policy wording and that contract well defined. I know some companies, the policy wording changes over time, but if you get that contract locked in early,
Yep.
Things can change, but you've already had that agreement set up.
Yeah, for sure. So that's it, man. Especially when it comes to health insurance, like it's the most claimed on product. I think up at about 54,000 claims at Partners Life with health insurance claims, and if you compare that to life cover, was dramatically a lot lower, right? So with health insurance, having guaranteed policy wordings is really, really important. And what it means is that, if the policy provider or the insurance provider changes their wordings, that only applies to new clients coming on board. So if you have a health insurance policy locked in, which you should, and it's a long-term commitment, you're always going to be entitled to those benefits that you signed up for from day one.
And one of the last things I want to talk about is, I know that you're a big picture guy. You've been helping advisors for a long time, and you've been doing that at scale, like helping across the entire industry. Now you're in a position where you're dealing with the end customer. One thing I like that you've been, going into large organizations who traditionally might not have access to quality financial advice, and given that bigger picture understanding of how they can set themselves up for the future. And it's more than just insurance. Some like high profile organizations. Like, can you talk about that experience and how that's been going for you?
No. So I had a chance through a friend now, I'll consider him. So Motu, he put my name forward to go have a chat to this organization, and it was just around financial awareness, and it was a really good conversation. There was quite a lot of people in the room, and a lot of people who are just starting out their careers and earning some really good money. So it was just kind of telling a story in a way that gets the cogs turning around what they want to do with their with their money going forward, right? So it was a really cool session. I didn't really talk much about insurance. It was just more around options going forward, and insurance was a small part of it. So
the insurance, the important part is protecting when you've got something like that's worth keeping. And I mean, you'd say that your income is always going to be the most important thing you can keep.
Yep.
But that even having those conversations up front always is going to add value to the insurance conversation when you've got all those assets to protect.
That's it, man. So if you're kind of widening the scope, insurance is just going to be part of that, and eventually you're going to get to that discussion sooner or later. If you're with any financial kind of decision or discussions. So it's just, I guess, planting that seed, and then when the time's right, you've got to engage and make sure you document your discussions.
Absolutely, record keeping. So I guess, how would, if there was an advisor out there that wasn't currently doing insurance and want an introduction to you, like what's the best way to reach you?
So maybe just my website, so onainsurance.co.nz. All my details are there. I'm just starting up my social media, so started up a small Instagram account, which is ONA Insurance. But probably my website has all my details there. My email, contact details, and
I'll put a link in the show notes.
Cool.
And give you a follow as well on social media.
Oh, cheers, man.
Up those numbers,
I think you're going to be my 10th follower, or so. Yeah.
Well, if you get in early, there's some type of like early benefit, right?
The foundation membership,
that's
follower
right.
membership. Yeah.
Don't forget it. I like those first posts. Man, I really appreciate you coming in today. There's been some amazing insights. I think just the fact that you've been in the industry for 12 years behind the other side of the fence, and now doing it from the advisor's point of view, I think there'd be some really great takeaways, going through the licensing process, talking about the trends that you see in the insurance industry. There's a lot to take away. So I really appreciate you giving up your time to join us.
Yeah, no worries, Warwick. Was happy to come in, and thank you for allowing me to join the party, mate. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Cheers.